Calculus student, in this video I'm going to explain how to find the length of the curve. So it is a part of the applications of definite integral, unit 8. Quick review about what is unit 8 about. It's about finding the area between the curve, which we have already learned how to find the intersections, and the setup is top minus bottom and you get the area under the curve. Then we also learn volume by rotation or revolution, which is a disk method, revolving around the x-axis or revolving around the y-axis depending on the scenario. And we also did washer method. Washer method is we scoop out the volume from inside, so very similar, top minus bottom, but we subtract the two volumes. So this concept is, today's topic is about finding the arc length. Now we are going to rely upon familiar friend. So I'm going to informally explain the concept about arc length. So previously we have learned how to find the area by splitting this into each rectangle. If you recall, we call that Riemann sum, and we collected all the rectangles and we find the area of this curve under the f of x. So very similar, collection means adding. So we are going to integrate, right? But not rectangles. So let's talk about the same concept, but I need to find the length of the curve. I need this length. So what we are going to do it is we are going to use Pythagorean theorem. Instead of area, we are going to use Pythagorean theorem, which means I'm going to cut down this into small, 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 tiny, tiny, tiny Pythagorean theorem. So we call this dx and we call this dy. And we know that horizontal distance square, vertical distance square, you get this arc length, which is a length square. Think of that way. So if I want to find this length is I have to take a square root, which is dx square and dy square. So this will give me all those tiny, 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 tiny arc length. Now, concept of integral is adding. So pretty much you can create the formula for this is, it's much easier to understand the formula if we know the concept is integration, obviously from a to b. Okay, so now I'm adding all those tiny, tiny, tiny arc length. Think of that. Each Pythagorean theorem, each of them. So I'm taking a square root and squaring this. And this is my arc length. But then who is dx and who is dy? So then we have to do little algebra that if I divide everything by dx square, so dx over dx, I get 1. dy dx is, we know what that means. dy dx is our f prime and dx. So this is the formula for arc length. We are also going to use this in a parametric, which is we find the two derivatives, and in parametrics this is called distance. Here we are using the word arc length. So let's take a look at the formula. Here I have informally I explain what this is here. The whole concept is explained here. If I add all those Pythagorean theorem, and this is my tiny, 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 tiny arc length from A to B, and the formula is derived here, and you have to know this formula. So make sure you understand this. A to B, 1 plus f prime of x square. Many students are forgetting to square. Sometimes students are forgetting to find a derivative. So let's use this formula. So if I go on the other side, let's talk about the definition. There is not a definition, but you have to make sure that anytime derivative is involved, which means function has to be differentiable. That's why we call smooth curve. So what happens if it is not a smooth curve? If it is not a smooth curve, then you have to split in a two pieces. You have to split in a two pieces. But the formula works for, since it's involved derivatives, we have to make sure it's a differentiable. Sometimes you have to do vertical also because function is not differentiable horizontal vertically. I mean, sorry, for function is not differentiable in terms of dx. Dy dx does not exist, then you have to go vertically, which is very similar to what we have done in the area and volume also. Do everything in terms of y. Most of the time you will see in terms of x. Rarely you will see any in terms of y. So let's take a look at this example here. Very few, oh, another thing is very few of these integrals are solvable without calculator. So the good news is in AP exam, most of the time they ask for setup. If not setup, then calculator will be allowed. So make sure you know how to use a calculator as well, because it involves integration, it involves uh, square root, and it involves derivative. So let's take a look at this example here. Arc length of this graph y equal to x cube over 6 plus 1 over 2x. Now let's rewrite this 1 over 2x as 1 half x to the negative 1. And the interval is 1 half to 2. Now know that this function does not exist at x equal to 0. We can see there is a vertical asymptote, but 0 is not involved. So first of all, let's take a look at whether we should do in terms of dy or do we do in terms of dx. So I'm finding derivative x cube over 6, 3x squared over 6, and derivative of 1 half x to the negative 1 is negative 1 half x squared. Notice this again not differentiable at 0, but 0 is not in the interval. So which means we are ready to go. Okay, so let's say you must show the setup. So the setup is here. Negative 1 half to 2 square root 1 plus dy dx square dx. You can use f prime also. Now we have a f prime ready here, so which I'm going to substitute here. And I'm going to use it as negative 1 half to 2, 1 plus, you must show the substitution, show the substitution, and evaluate this as an answer. Okay, so the hint, how do you use a calculator? If you are using calculator to evaluate this on a home screen, you will need so many parentheses. So I highly recommend that you put your equation as a y1, y2 is a dy dx of y1, and here when you are evaluating, you can say 1 plus y2 square, and here is negative half to 2 dy dx. This will be much easier to evaluate the integral on a home screen. Take advantage of how to do it. If not, then you will need to put so many parentheses. In AP exam, you must substitute dy dx here. You cannot keep it outside. You cannot just substitute f prime. You have to find the actual value of f prime. So you can pause the video here and practice putting this in a calculator and check if you get the answer. Now my answer is without calculator, so that's why it's 33 over 16, but you should have answer 16 point something. Let's take a look at another example here. So clearly you are given this graph and this is a function y minus 1 cube equal to x square on the interval 0 to 8. So this is your x interval. The graph is given to you, so you should understand this is 0 to 8. Now, what shall we do in terms of x or in terms of y? So let's check first of all our normal way. Okay, our normal way means in terms of x. So you have to find a dy dx. I'm solving for y. Solving for y. So third root, which is x to the 2/3, add 1 and find derivative. Dy dx is 2/3 x to the negative 1/3. Remember, you subtract the power. Negative exponents, you should realize that why I always ask you to bring it down. Now, clearly, this derivative does not exist at 0, which means dy dx is not going to work because we can't use the function does not exist or the end point can't work with x. So what do? We give up? No, we don't give up. We try another method, which is cube. Sorry, in terms of y. Sorry. Y minus 1 cube is equal to x square. So let's solve for x. Solving for x is take a square root, so which is 3/2. And you should have some idea that derivative of 3/2, it will be positive exponent. And on the y interval, now you are going to check differentiability on 1 through 5. Now 1 minus 1 is a 0, but 0 is still considered good answer. So function is differentiable on 1 to 5. Function is differentiable on 1 to 5. Okay, so how do we find the area? How do we find the arc length? So arc length is 1 through 5. Notice y values 1 through 5, 1 plus dx dy. This is not a dy dx, this is a dx dy square and dy. Again, how do we become effective, efficient? Entering this in a calculator will be difficult. So 3/2 square is a 9/4. Y minus 1 square root square is y minus 1. And you are using a calculator like a normal. And this is normally the letter S is used for arc length. And this is the length of this arc from 1 through 5. Let's practice with one more on the other side. Okay, so arc length of y equal to ln of cosine x. ln of cosine x on the interval 0 to pi over 4. Now remember, cosine 0 is 1. ln 1 is a 0. So function is continuous and differentiable. So what's the derivative of y? What's the derivative of ln? ln, derivative of ln of something means 1 over something. And that 1 over something is 1 over cosine. Derivative of cosine is negative sine x. Everybody is required to know that what is sine over cosine is a tangent x. Tangent 0 is a 0. Tangent pi over 4 is a 1. So yes, this function is good to go. Differentiable. And yes, you can use it. Okay, so let's talk about the setup. This is actually AP question, which is a multiple choice question, which was, but I have here put it as an open-ended. So setup is 0 to pi over 4 square root 1 plus derivative, which is negative tangent x square dx. Negative square become positive and it become 1 plus tangent square. Now this original question was only setup only, multiple choice, and this was not the answer, which means you are supposed to know that Pythagorean identities 1 plus tangent square is secant square. And secant square and the square root becomes secant x. So this was the answer choice in a multiple choice. You could use a calculator and find the actual answer. So it's a good practice of using calculator, how to find. This is not possible to do it without calculator. So even if we have never memorized or we have not done antiderivative of secant x, no. So let's talk about what happens if the graph is not smooth curve. If the graph is not smooth curve, for example, is here. So then what do? Well, we have to split in a two pieces because function is not differentiable at x equal to 0. From the graph, clearly you can see. Now, without you have to have some idea about this absolute value function. You should know what is absolute value x is. Absolute x means positive and negative. Negative if on the other side, positive when x is positive. So you got the idea that we have to split this over the two. So let's talk about how do we split on -4 to 0 and 0 to 4. -4 to 0, this is negative x, which means replace absolute x as a negative x. 0 to 4, replace absolute x as a positive x. One more time, let's understand. This is a relatively easy question, but you must know basics about absolute value x. So -4 to 0 is negative and 0 to 4 is a positive. And now you simplify. Become x squared plus 3x. This 2 negative makes it positive. And this becomes x squared minus 5x. What is dy dx? 2x minus 5. What is dy dx? 2x plus 3. And everything else is now same. What is the setup? Let's check the setup. Setup is -4 to 0 square root of 1 plus 2x plus 3 square dx. 0 to 4 square root of 1 plus 2x minus 5 square dx. I have stopped here for just the setup part. You should be able to evaluate this and get the actual answer. So one more time, summarizing, arc length is you have to find the derivative. You don't have to do this homework. Homework is a different pages. So one more time, you have to find the arc length and find the derivative, square, add square root, and integrate it a to b. Like I said in the beginning, that you always think about this as a Pythagorean theorem. You are finding all the hypotenuses and you are adding them. Now, tip for AP exam. In AP exam, they are asked like this. Take a look at these multiple choice questions. I highly encourage that you look at all of them. All these multiple choice questions are related to arc length. And in a free response questions, they are asking as a perimeter. So I'm just a quick explaining perimeter. What is a perimeter? What's the concept? Perimeter means add all sides. So let's take a look at this example. This was with calculator, but do not evaluate means many times it only asks for evaluating. I mean, not to evaluate, but the setup alone. So I'm going to help you for perimeter part on this problem. Perimeter means this side, then that side, and this one. Sum of all these three is perimeter. So for example, let's set up P. Okay, so this is clearly, this length is y-intercept, which is a 1. So 1 plus this line. So what is a y prime for this is 3/4. So I can say this interval you have to find out. By the way, this is a calculator questions and you have to do graph and intersects and you have to find this later and you have to store that as a. So I'm only explaining perimeter part here. So I can say 0 to a square root 1 plus y prime is 3/4 square dx plus the orange color arc length. So what will be this y prime is 4 minus 3x square. So again 0 to a 1 plus 4 minus 3x square, don't forget dx. And this will give you full credit. And in fact, these are a lot of points, worth 3 points. This is a very old question. Find area, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. So what is the rubric for the perimeter is, do you have a correct, this number you are expected to store and recall and use that as a is this number. Correct formula. So one part, second part, and one. Don't forget this. That's the most often student forget. So multiple choice questions, whichever way you do it, free response question, just get concept of perimeter. There are many practice problems you could work on. And there is another one here. So hope this helps. Thank you for watching.